Let's talk to Julie Fraser right now. She's a campaigner at End Our Cladding Scandal. They're calling on the government to lead an urgent national effort to fix these cladding and building safety crises that are still ongoing. Julie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi there, Julia.
Thank you. I mean, look, this report, it's damning, it's hard-hitting. There's no doubt at all Sir Martin does not pull his punches. You know, he points the finger clearly, squarely at pretty much everybody. Does it say enough? Is it what you wanted to hear?
As you just said previously, it's no surprise what has been written today. And we now need the new Labour government, Keir, if you're listening, please, now really get a grip on this situation. The previous government they tried. Michael Gove, he really, I believe, did his best. And we moved a lot further forward than we had been previously.
There were efforts, weren't there? He was housing secretary about sort of basically, squaring up with the building companies to say you're going to take down this cladding at your own expense. But there was a huge cost to the taxpayer from this. But we've still got 340,000 people living with unsafe cladding in their buildings.
Yes, as you said, 11,000 buildings. My building being one of them, that is set for remediation, but it's been delayed.
And when did you discover it had that kind of cladding that was dangerous?
2 years after Grenfell, 2019.
And so you're still, do you own your flat?
Well, we don't really own them, do we? We own the lease.
You're the leaseholder. But either way, you can't sell it because no one's going to buy a flat.
No.
You'd have to reveal that when you sold it. No one in their right minds would do it. I imagine a mortgage company won't give a mortgage because they don't know what the cost is going to be for those refurbishments. I mean, I've spoken to people in the past from your organisation where they're getting the work done, but they're being given bills of 200 grand to have the work done. Each flat. Like, people haven't got that sort of money. So you're stuck in a home every day that could go up in flames like Grenfell did, like the building block in Dagenham only last week did, and there's nothing really you can do about it.
There's absolutely nothing. I'm quite fortunate, actually. I'll just correct you on that because I don't actually live in my apartment anymore.
Thank goodness.
I rent it out.
But still, that person.
Yeah, I've got many friends who live in there, and at the end of this, but the financial cost is horrendous, no doubt. But at the end of all this, you look at the survivors of Grenfell, what they went through. 72 people lost their lives, and people are still living in these buildings that are completely unsafe. They could, a fire could hit any time, and height it just shouldn't even come into it. There are buildings under 11 metres. They get no help, financial help.
Well, that's it. It was originally it was help for buildings over 18 metres, and then it was 11 metres. And people were saying, look, these buildings are all unsafe if you can't get out of them when they're on fire.
Absolutely. You might be able to get out of a smaller building quicker, but at the end of the day, it can still set on fire. You're still at risk. And so all those people, we actually figure there's nearer to 600,000 people living in these buildings. Every night they go to bed in fear that could happen to them. And I have to say today our thoughts have to be with the Grenfell community.
Absolutely.
What they've gone through, are still going through, and the government now, they have to prosecute. These are criminals.
This is it. There's no doubt at all, and there's no doubt at all that the inquiry chair, Sir Martin Moore-Bick, he's pointing the finger. He goes through a very long list. We played a clip earlier. Here are all the people to blame. But what we need is not just sort of corporate manslaughter charges and negligence or whatever. We need individuals to take responsibility, because it's quite clear from the evidence that we heard throughout those 7 years and many, many, many days of evidence that there are people who they weren't just a bit slipshod in their attitude to these things. They actively knew that they were testing cladding, knowing it was flammable, knowing it could go up in flames any time, knowing that it was a risk. Well, let's say, if we put this non-combustible board on either side, now it passes the test, and then selling it when it's going to be put on a building without those fire safety precautions, knowing that, somehow still sleeping at night, which is what blows my mind, that they did that. I don't know on what basis that anyone involved in that shouldn't be behind bars right now.
They should be. And as I, hopefully Keir Starmer and his new government will do exactly that.
Yeah.
They might have said it's going to be at least a year to 18 months. Why? I mean, really, why? All the evidence is there now. People have been named. Get a grip. Put them behind bars. It's murder. There's no doubt about it. It's murder.
Yeah.
How many more people have to die in that way for them to actually realise what has been going on? They've known all along.
And this is it, they knew before. And again, in Germany, this kind of cladding, I remember knowing this the day after the Grenfell fire. I was looking into all this the day after, because actually it was the Grenfell residents had raised this in their own documents, which I read online. I mean, again, the council could read them because I was able to find them, saying that German authorities had banned this cladding because they'd found it unsafe after a near fatal fire. Seems to me that anyone who manufactured, tested, commissioned, put on and approved this cladding. I mean, this is no different to someone tampering with your car's brakes and then saying, "Can you drive at 70 on a motorway?" There's no difference. It's the same thing, and you'd prosecute that person.
You would. It just makes me so angry. I mean, today myself personally, I'm full of so many different emotions.
Yeah.
Anger being one of them. I was really emotional this morning listening to Sir Martin reading out, parts from the report. Those people from Grenfell are reliving all of that disaster that evening. They're reliving this again today in a really horrendous way. And for 7 years they've gone through this. Why has it taken so long?
Yeah.
I mean, the cladding on my building, the government actually said some years ago that it was absolutely fine. They knew it wasn't.
Yeah.
HPL cladding is not fine. And the really thing that crawls me, I believe that if you added certain chemicals to these materials, it could be completely inflammable.
Really?
But it's down to cost again.
And this is something that Sir Martin said is down to incompetence, dishonesty, and greed. But again, imagine putting money ahead of lives of innocent people. That's the astonishing thing. Well, you're still fighting. You're still trying to get the cladding off. Remedial work plan. Again, that's what lots of people are being told. Again, what amazes me is often this is being done at the cost of those leaseholders as opposed to the cost of the companies that put it on. None of which those companies should still be in existence anyway, because they should all have been. Every single person should be in prison, if you ask me. But again, it all comes down fundamentally to me, to the government, because we know there are going to be cowboys. We know there are going to be people who do dodgy things, and that's why you have regulation. That's why you have people who are supposed to check these things to make sure that money is not the issue. They're just talking about safety, and that fundamentally has got to come down to government regulatory failure, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And as we said, it's all down to cost. They've known since, was it 1991, 30 plus years ago, that these materials were not good.
Yeah.
So, and they've allowed it, the building regulations were not fit for purpose. But that's an excuse that now the developers use. Yeah. Well, we followed the regulations at the time, and they were fully aware.
They knew what they were doing.
Of course they did.
Julie, I so appreciate you joining us. I'm so sorry you're going through this, and it's just simply by bad luck that you're in that situation. Anyone else, and indeed in Grenfell as well. But you happen to be one of those people in those homes that has this. But keep on fighting. We'll do everything we can to make sure we publicise your cause and hold the government to account. Julie Fraser, campaigner at End Our Cladding Scandal. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pearce, your reaction, but also just want to read out a statement we've just had from Councillor Elizabeth Campbell. She's the leader of Kensington and Chelsea Council. She says, on behalf of the council, I apologise unreservedly with my whole heart to the bereaved survivors and residents of Grenfell for our failure to listen and to protect them. The inquiry has laid bare the chain of events that led to that night. We fully accept its findings, which are a withering critique of a system broken from top to bottom. It shows beyond doubt that this council failed the residents of Grenfell Tower and the 72 people, including 18 children, who died. We failed to keep people safe before and during the refurbishment, and we failed to treat people with humanity and care in the aftermath. We will learn. Oh, we hear that, don't we? It's all good up to that point. We will learn from every single criticism in the report. We will take time to study it further in detail, reflect, blah, 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 blah at that point. But, I mean, those are strong words. But there isn't anywhere for anyone to hide. You're going to have to issue statements like that, aren't you?
Well, of course you do. I mean, that's what you would expect. And I think it needed to be shorter than that because, as you say, it's the stuff that we've all heard before.
Yeah,
Lessons
and that's the
learned.
thing. And again, we're hearing from our guest Julie Fraser, and we've heard from other people in the organisation. I mean, she's rented her flat out. Again, do you have to say to the person you're renting out, by the way, this is an unsafe building? But people are stuck in these homes now. There was a lot of talk, I remember, early on in this, that this was a class thing, this was a race thing. It was because these were largely poor people living in these flats in Grenfell. A lot of them were immigrants, and we discovered an awful lot actually illegal immigrants who basically were given leave to stay. Basically, come forward, let us know who you are, because you're not going to be deported. We need to know if everyone's accounted for, was the main thing. A lot of people subletting their apartments. We've had, scores of people, I think, have been convicted of fraud as a result of this again. Yeah. But none of that takes away from how badly people were treated before and during and after the Grenfell fire and what happened with the cladding. But the claim was that it was poor people, it was people of colour, no one cared, it was Kensington Council, they were a Tory council, you didn't care about the poor people, But we know there are, plenty of people who live in blocks, in flats that they own, white middle class, who are having exactly the same issues. This was tried to be turned into a nasty Tories hating poor black people. That's what they tried to turn it into. It's nothing of the sort. No. They hated everybody.
It was not anything to do with race or class. And if you look across the country, these buildings and this sort of cladding is in evidence in very many different areas. So different populations, different ethnicities, different classes. It's just widespread, and I think that that's where we need to go. The largest contributor, according to Martin Moore-Bick, the systematic dishonesty of the manufacturers of the cladding.
Yeah. Fundamentally, they lied.
Yeah.
I just don't see a way in which these people don't get prosecuted and don't, frankly...
start with them and then work down.
But again, we still need people... Again, we still rely on governments and councils or elected representatives and people in public bodies to keep us safe from the charlatans, from the cowboys, and that's their job. They can't pass the buck.